It wasn't like an overnight type of thing, but over time, the Mongol dynasty did win the support of the Chinese people. Mostly is because of the prosperity that came from the Silk Road. So we talked about their Silk Road connections and how important it was to the to the betterment and to maintaining how their stuff was going to work out. So it was in part due to this prosperity that the Chinese people were like, hey, you know what? I'm making more money right now. Maybe these guys are okay. And so we talked about how they did how they kept up with the Silk Road. So, but I want to expand on that a little bit because I think that it will make some more sense to you how the Silk Road was so important to these people and really how China prospered from that Silk Road and Europe. Europe actually prospered from that Silk Road as well. So here's what they did. They saw the need, they saw the ability of the Silk Road to meet a need in funding their military campaigns. So how they did this was they made it to where people crossing the Silk Roads didn't have to fear for getting robbed on the Silk Road anymore. So they had these caravans that would go back and forth. We've been talking about the Silk Road, so I'm hoping that you're kind of getting this by now. But these caravans, they would start in one city and then go to the next one. They'd just be kind of working back and forth between them, and then the next city would work and so on and so forth, and then this one worked back to here. And they're constantly just working from one city to the next, and then back and forth between those. And then the person that's at this city would go to this city, and then this city, then go to this city. That's how it pretty much worked. It was a huge network of trade, but they were able to provide protection for people on that Silk Road, meaning that there were way stations all along the Silk Road. There was military presence like everywhere. If you got out of line, they were going to come down hard on you. If you stole stuff from people, they were going to come down hard on you, and you were really unlikely to actually be able to put somebody in a lot of danger and taking their stuff from them. And so with that protection, what that ended up giving us is, what that ended up giving people that were merchants was like less fear. It took fear away from them, and they felt like they could invest in their merchant company. They could start at one end and then go to another place and not have to worry about somebody coming and taking their stuff from them, and them losing their livelihood basically. One person in particularly that traveled this Silk Road all the way to the Yuan dynasty was Marco Polo. Marco Polo writes all kinds of crazy cool stuff about the Yuan dynasty and Kublai Khan particularly, his exploits, his conquest and that type of stuff. His books are really what drove people in the age of exploration, particularly Christopher Columbus, to explore and try to get to the East. It was them reading. He was like Christopher Columbus's like mentor, 200 and something years earlier, however long earlier. It was basically a person that gave them the desire to go east, to grab stuff, to see the grandeur of all of the stuff that was Asia. He wrote particularly really big stuff about Khanbalik. Khanbalik again is Beijing today, but he wrote this like shining reviews basically. So it was good for him to be there. These stories, they seemed like they were way too much and that they were pretty well unbelievable to most Europeans, but you got to take things at face value, and that's pretty much how these people saw things. And so whenever the Silk Road start to dry up and they're reading these books from Marco Polo, and there begins to be people like the Ottomans who really nobody wants to deal with the Ottomans. That's just, they're like nobody wants to deal with them, especially if they were Christians in Europe. They didn't want to deal with the Ottomans. The Ottomans were the people who snuffed out the Byzantine Empire. And if you can get away from dealing with the Ottomans, you're going to. And so they used people that had gone across the Silk Road and wrote books like Marco Polo to say, you know what, there's a better world out there. I don't want to have to deal with the Ottomans. Why don't we get in a boat and see if we can't find a better place to get a better way to get over there to get our spices that we really love. And it's really kind of dangerous to get on the Silk Road now because there are no Mongols anymore that are protecting said Silk Road, the Silk Trail at this point. And so we're going to find some other way to do this. So they used books from Marco Polo. They used books from other travelers that went that direction, but Marco Polo was like the number one guy to kind of spur on and kind of encourage trips into the East or trips trying to go to the East.